All right, listeners, get ready for a legendary deep dive today because we're taking on the Legend of Zelda timeline.
Yeah, we're talking decades of games here.
That's right.
Each one filled with so much lore and characters and all those plot twists.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough to figure out just when everything actually happens.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Even with help from things like Hyrule Historia.
Right.
The newer games Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, man.
They really threw a wrench in the works.
It's true. They've thrown in some serious curveballs, but I think that's part of what makes it so fun, right?
Absolutely.
It's like we're Hyrule historians, trying to piece together this massive puzzle. So are you ready to explore
I am.
the threads of heroism, tragedy, and divine intervention that make up this iconic timeline?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's start right at the beginning, before Hyrule, before the Master Sword even.
Okay.
We've got the creation myth.
We do.
So we start with these three golden goddesses, Din, Nayru, and Furore,
Right.
and they pretty much create everything.
They do. Din, the goddess of power, creates the land itself. Nayru, the goddess of wisdom. She creates the laws of the world.
Makes sense.
And Furore, the goddess of courage, she brings forth all life to Hyrule.
Okay.
Their most important creation
What's that?
is the Triforce. This golden triangle represents their combined power and is essentially the lifeblood of Hyrule.
Whoa, hold on. Lifeblood of Hyrule. What does that even mean?
It means that the Triforce is super important, way more than just some magical artifact. It's so connected to Hyrule that if it were destroyed, the entire world would collapse.
No way. That's
Yeah.
a pretty big deal.
Huge stakes.
So the goddesses create the world, the Triforce, and then they just kind of disappear.
Well, not exactly. They entrust the Triforce to a guardian, a goddess named Hylia, and that's where things get really interesting.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Because Hylia had to protect the Triforce against this ultimate evil being known as Demise the Demon King.
I've heard of that guy.
Their conflict, it sparked a huge, devastating war.
This is all starting to sound familiar.
It is, this is where we see Hylia create Skyloft, right?
Oh, like in Skyward Sword.
Exactly. It was all part of her plan to protect the Hylians,
Wow.
because she knew she couldn't defeat Demise directly. So she raises the islands into the sky for safety. She forges the goddess sword.
Which later becomes...
You got it, the master sword.
Okay.
And then she prepares for something really wild. She's going to reincarnate as a mortal.
As who?
As Zelda.
Wait a minute. So the Zelda we all know and love
Yep.
is actually a goddess.
That's right. And this plan sets up this whole cycle of hero and princess that we see throughout the entire series.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got Zelda now. Where does Link fit in?
Okay, so then we have the first Link, the hero of the sky.
Okay.
He masters the goddess sword, and eventually he faces off against Demise in this epic final battle.
Of course they fight.
They do, and Link wins.
But Demise doesn't go down without a fight.
No, he does not. As he's dying Demise, he curses both Link and Zelda.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He vows that his hatred will be reborn again and again, and that ensures that the conflict between good and evil will continue forever.
So that curse is the reason we get Ganondorf and Calamity Ganon and every other bad guy that's ever tried to destroy Hyrule.
That's exactly right. It's the core of the entire Zelda story.
Wow. Okay, so even though Demise is defeated in that moment,
Yeah.
his curse lives on and creates this never-ending cycle of conflict.
It's a pretty heavy idea.
Yeah, it really is. But Demise's defeat also allows the Skyloftians to finally come back down to the surface and actually found Hyrule,
That's right.
which brings us to the era of tears.
It does.
So what happens during this time?
Well, this era is marked by the reign of Rauru, Hyrule's first king.
Okay.
And he was actually a Zonai, a member of this really ancient and powerful tribe.
The Zonai.
The Zonai, they brought with them these mysterious artifacts known as secret stones.
Secret stones, huh? Those sound important.
They are. They amplify power, and they're also connected to the sages.
Oh, right. Those wise figures who always seem to be guiding the heroes.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is where things start to get a little confusing for me.
Okay.
Where do Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, and Tears of the Kingdom fit into all of this?
Yeah.
They kind of seem to break the timeline, don't they?
You're right about that. Those games have caused a lot of debate in the Zelda community about where they belong. Some fans even think that Zelda's time travel in Tears of the Kingdom might have created a totally separate timeline.
Right. And what about that Uroboro symbol in Tears of the Kingdom? You know, the snake eating its own tail?
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem like a pretty big clue that there's some sort of time loop happening?
It could be, but for now, let's stick to the parts of the timeline that are a little more straightforward.
Okay, sounds good to me. So let's talk about a major turning point in Hyrule's history, the Imprisoning War. This is where Ganondorf, the Gerudo king, really makes his big entrance.
That's right. This is Ganondorf's very first attempt to take control. He betrays the royal family and unleashes this devastating war across Hyrule.
And we see all these epic battles and alliances between different races like the Gorons, the Zora, the Rito.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone bands together to fight back against Ganondorf.
It was a true fight for survival. And in a truly selfless act, Zelda makes the difficult decision to seal herself away with the Master Sword.
Hold on, how do you seal yourself away with a sword?
Well, it's even wilder than that. She actually goes through something called draconification.
Draconification.
Yeah, it's where she transforms into a dragon to bind her power with the Master Sword.
Whoa, wait a minute. Zelda turns into a dragon.
It's a pretty amazing plot twist, right?
That's incredible.
It's a huge sacrifice, and it really shows just how far Zelda is willing to go to protect Hyrule.
And her actions, they have major consequences,
Yes, they do.
reaching thousands of years into the future.
That's right.
Because 10,000 years later, we have the first Calamity.
Exactly. A Zonai hero wielding the Master Sword, he faces off against Calamity Ganon, who is basically a manifestation of Ganondorf's hatred.
And naturally, he has a princess helping him out.
Of course. Got to continue that cycle.
Right. It's amazing how even in this ancient past,
Yeah.
we still see all these core elements of the Zelda story.
It really shows you how Demise's curse set off this chain of events that shaped Hyrule's destiny for millennia.
So we have this ancient hero defeating Calamity Ganon.
Yep.
But the story doesn't just end there, right?
No, it does not. The events that lead up to the second Calamity, which sets the stage for Breath of the Wild, are super important too.
Okay.
We see the champions fall. Link is badly wounded, put into a 100-year sleep, and Zelda, she seals Calamity Ganon away to give Hyrule time to recover.
That's a pretty tragic period.
It is.
And it leads directly into the events of Breath of the Wild.
It does.
But what about Age of Calamity? Doesn't that game kind of mess with the timeline a little bit with all his time travel stuff?
Yeah, Age of Calamity definitely adds another layer of complexity. But for now, let's focus on the main timeline and dive into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
All right, sounds like a plan. Stay tuned, everyone, because things are about to get wild.
Welcome back, everyone. When we left off, Hyrule was facing some seriously dark times.
Yeah, the second Calamity, talk about a downer.
The champions were gone, Link was in a deep sleep for a whole century, and Zelda, she was desperately trying to hold back Calamity Ganon.
Bleak. It was definitely bleak. But even in the middle of all that chaos and loss, there's still a little bit of hope, right?
There is. Breath of the Wild starts with Link waking up in the Shrine of Resurrection.
Yeah, after 100 years, he finally wakes up. His memories are a little fuzzy, but his destiny's pretty clear. Defeat Calamity Ganon and save Hyrule.
That's right, but he's got a lot of catching up to do.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Hyrule's a mess. The divine beasts are all corrupted. Guardians are running wild everywhere. It's a disaster.
It is. But luckily, Link's got some help. He has the Shake of Sleep.
Oh, yeah, the Shake of Slate. It's like the ultimate Swiss Army knife of ancient tech.
Right. It's a map, a camera, a weapon. It even has a magnet.
What can't that thing do?
The Shakos were seriously brilliant, and the slate, it's going to be super important for Link as he explores Hyrule.
Right. He needs all the help he can get.
He rediscovers his past, learns all these incredible new abilities, and eventually he's able to free the divine beasts from Ganon's control.
Those divine beasts are amazing, giant, mechanical animals piloted by the spirits of the champions.
Pretty cool, right?
It's awesome. And through them, Link's finally able to confront Calamity Ganon in Hyrule Castle.
That final battle is intense.
I bet it's one of those moments where you're just glued to the screen. You know,
Yeah.
the fate of Hyrule's hanging in the balance.
It really is Link with his Master Sword Zelda using her sealing powers. It's epic.
Absolutely. So they win, right?
They do. It's a hard-fought victory, but it's bittersweet.
How so?
Hyrule's finally free from Ganon, but the spirits of the champions and King Rome, they have to move on.
Oh, man, that's sad.
Yeah, they leave Link and Zelda with this huge task of rebuilding their kingdom.
Which is what they start doing in Tears of the Kingdom, but right from the start, something feels off.
What do you mean?
Remember the incredible Sheikah technology from Breath of the Wild? It's all gone. The towers, the shrines, the guardians, poof, vanished.
It's a total mystery, and fans have been coming up with all sorts of theories to explain it.
Like what?
Well, some people think that maybe when the divine beast shut down after Ganon was defeated, it triggered some kind of fail-safe mechanism in all the Sheikah tech causing it to just disappear.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like a self-destruct sequence to prevent their technology from falling into the wrong hands.
Exactly. Could have been disastrous.
Right, so the missing Shake Attack is just the first surprise that Tears of the Kingdom throws at us.
Yeah. And then there's Ganondorf.
Oh, no, is he back?
He is, and he's not messing around this time. He's back in his true form.
No more Calamity Ganon avatar. This is the real deal.
Yep, and to make matters even worse, the Master Sword gets shattered pretty early on in the game.
No way. What's Link supposed to do without his trusty sword?
Well, this is where Link has to get creative.
Oh.
He gets this new arm that's infused with the power of Ro-Ru, the first king of Hyrule.
Wow, and the Zonai.
Oh yeah, those mysterious ancients, their technology and abilities become really important in Tears of the Kingdom.
So they weren't just messing around with those secret stones.
No, they were not. And Link basically becomes a Zonai tech engineer.
He's building vehicles, creating weapons, manipulating objects in ways we've never seen before.
It's awesome.
And don't forget about those new sage abilities.
Right. Link gathers a new team of sages with all sorts of amazing elemental powers.
Like his own superhero squad.
Exactly. And then there's Zelda.
Oh, what happens to her?
Well, thanks to her own latent powers, she ends up getting flung back in time.
Time travel. That's a pretty big twist.
It is. It adds this whole other layer of mystery to the story. What happened to Zelda in the past?
What?
We're still figuring that out.
Yeah, what did happen to her?
But even with Zelda lost in time, Link still has to deal with Ganondorf in the present.
So they have another epic showdown.
They do, and it's unlike anything we've seen before.
I can't even imagine.
It's a battle that spans the depths of Hyrule and then culminates in this incredible clash high above the clouds. Link, using all his Zonai powers, fighting alongside his sage companions, they go all out.
That sounds intense.
It's breathtaking, and then that ending.
Tell up.
Link and Zelda, they fall from the sky? Zelda's unconscious in his arms. It's such a cliffhanger.
So we know Hyrule's safe for now. But what about Link and Zelda? What's going to happen to them?
That's the beauty of The Legend of Zelda. There are always more stories to tell, more mysteries to solve.
And speaking of mysteries, there's one we haven't really talked about yet, where do Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom actually fit on the official timeline?
That's the million rupee question, isn't it?
It is.
And even with all the clues and hints that Nintendo has given us, it's still a huge debate among fans.
Which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, these games really stick with us. They make us think and theorize long after we've finished playing them.
Absolutely. So are you ready to dive into some of those theories?
Hit me with them. Where do people think these games fall?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, so we've traveled all through Hyrule's history. From the very beginning to the epic battles in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. But there's one big question that's still hanging over our heads.
What's that?
Where do these two games actually fit on the timeline?
Ah, yes, the million rupee question.
It is. And even with all the clues and hints Nintendo's given us, it's a question that still has fans debating.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which I think is awesome.
Me too.
It means that these games have some serious staying power. They make us think and theorize long after we've put the controller down.
It's true. They really spark the imagination.
So let's dive into some of the most popular theories about where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom fall in the timeline.
Let's do it.
What are some of the top contenders?
Well, the most common theory is that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom take place at the very end of the Zelda timeline.
At the very end.
Like way, way at the end after all the other timelines have converged.
That would make sense. Hyrule in Breath of the Wild does feel ancient, like it's been through a lot.
It does.
And all those ruins everywhere hint at a really long and forgotten past.
Right, and the technology, especially the Shake Attack, is so advanced.
Oh, yeah.
It almost feels like it represents the peak of Hyrulean civilization.
Yeah, it does. And think about all the different races living together. The Rito, the Zora, the Gorons, the Gerudo.
You got it.
It's like they've all evolved over time.
Yeah.
And reached this kind of cultural harmony.
That's a good point, but wouldn't that mean thousands or even millions of years would have to have passed since the events of the other games?
That's true. It would take a pretty big stretch of time to make that work.
It would, but remember Zelda, she has time travel powers.
Right.
Who's to say that she hasn't messed with things a little bit? Created some time anomalies along the way.
Okay, you got me there. Time travel could explain a lot.
Right.
But what about the other theories? What are some of the other possibilities?
Well, another popular theory is that Breath of the Wild actually takes place after the Wind Waker.
After Wind Waker.
Specifically in the adult timeline, the one where the hero of time fails to defeat Ganondorf?
Right. So you're saying that the flooded Hyrule from Wind Waker eventually becomes the Hyrule we see in Breath of the Wild.
That's the idea. The waters recede and reveal this transformed Hyrule, and there's actually some evidence that supports this theory.
Really? What kind of evidence?
Well, both games have Koroks, and they play a similar role in both games.
As guardians of the forest?
Yeah, and the art style of Breath of the Wild, it's more vibrant and cel-shaded,
Oh, yeah.
which is similar to the Wind Waker.
So there are these little connections that could link the two games together.
Exactly. But of course, there are also some problems with this theory.
Like what?
Well, Breath of the Wild never actually mentions a flooded past.
Right.
And the geography of the world doesn't quite line up perfectly.
Interesting. And where does Tears of the Kingdom fit in with this theory?
That's the even bigger question, since Tears of the Kingdom deals with time travel and actually changes the past. Some people think that it might create an entirely separate timeline altogether.
Oh, so like a timeline split, like what we saw with Ocarina of Time.
Exactly. It would mean that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom exist in their own unique branch of the timeline,
Wow.
totally separate from the events of the other games.
That's kind of mind-blowing to think that those two games could represent a whole new chapter in Hyrule's history.
It really is, and that's what makes the Zelda timeline so fascinating.
Yeah, it's always evolving, always changing with each new game.
It's a living, breathing timeline.
And who knows what Nintendo has planned for us next.
Right. The next game could give us more answers about where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom really belong.
Or it could throw even more mysteries at us.
Probably that.
Either way,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for The Legend of Zelda.
Me neither.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey through time, heroes, and legends.
It has. We've explored the creation of Hyrule, the rise and fall of civilizations, the eternal struggle between good and evil.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover, so many details and connections to explore.
It's a truly rich and complex world.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
There's always something new, to find something to spark our curiosity and our imagination.
Well said.
We hope you enjoyed our deep dive and that it's inspired you to go back and revisit some of your favorite Zelda games.
Yeah, and maybe even come up with some theories of your own.
After all, the best theories are the ones that we create ourselves, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of Hyrule alive.
Until next time, may the Triforce be with you.